You're listening to School Leadership Reimagined, episode number 34.
Welcome to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast, where we rethink what's possible to transform your school. If you're tired of settling for small wins and incremental improvement, then stay tuned to discover powerful and practical strategies for getting every teacher in your school moving towards excellence. Now, here's your host, Robin Jackson.
Hey Builders, welcome to another episode of School Leadership Reimagined. I'm your host, Robin Jackson, and today we are starting a 4-episode arc about the 4 disciplines of buildership. Now, you've heard me say this before, but if you really want to make the transition from being a boss or a leader to being a builder, then you really need to be consistently practicing 4 things. You need to be giving people really, really good feedback, the kind that overcomes pushback and helps teachers continually improve and to become self-aware and to hone in on that one thing. You need to give teachers the right kind of support. So not just generic support, but support that helps them actually improve their practice at least one level on your observation instrument every single year. You need to be creating an accountability culture, a culture where everybody is accountable. You need to be accountable and you need to help other people be accountable. And finally, you need to be working consistently on your culture. You need to build a healthy school culture. But, even though I've talked about these 4 disciplines, I don't think I've ever gone into why these disciplines are so important to builders. So over the next 4 episodes, I'm going to be explaining what each discipline is, why it's so important, and how you can use all 4 disciplines to solve some of your biggest challenges and obstacles that you face as a builder. Because here's the thing. Any challenge that you face as a school or district administrator can be solved by practicing one of these 4 disciplines. So the better you are at practicing the 4 disciplines, the better you're going to be at solving the challenges that you face. Now, today is part 1 of the series. And so we're going to start by talking about culture because, I've been working with I have several coaching groups for school administrators. So I've got 3 coaching groups going on right now. And in all of these coaching groups with these school principals and with these district leaders, I'm seeing the same issue come up over and over and over again. And that's this. How do you get an initiative off the ground if you don't have a healthy school culture? And the answer is you can't. One of my favorite quotes is one that's attributed to Peter Drucker, and it says, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And what that means is you could have the greatest strategy in the world. You could have an amazing strategic plan. You could find a program that you believe would just solve everything in your school or in your district right away. But if your culture is not right, your plans, I don't care how good they are, they will not work. So today we're going to talk about how do you get your culture straight? How do you develop that healthy culture that doesn't eat your strategy for breakfast? And we're also going to talk about why it's so important, why it matters so much to the success of your school that you do have a healthy school culture. And it's not just because everybody feels better. There's some big, really important reasons why culture is so critical to the success of your school. Plus, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 questions that you must answer for people if you want to shape a school culture that is healthy, if you want to make sure that your school culture stays healthy, if you want to eradicate toxicity from your school culture, you have to consistently answer these 3 questions for people. And I mean, these questions are critical. And then finally, you're going to discover 2 crucial elements of any culture. So if you want to change your culture, you have to change these 2 things. Otherwise, you can't get your culture going. So if you're currently battling a toxic culture, or maybe your culture is pretty healthy, but you're interested in how do you make it even more healthy, then by the time we're done today, if you just stay tuned and listen, you are going to learn how to build a healthy school culture, and you're going to learn how to do it like a builder. But now I can't start talking about school culture before I talk to you about Builders Lab. And that's because, this podcast, you're going to get a lot of information from it. But if you really want to roll up your sleeves and dive into your school culture, you need to come to Builders Lab, because that's what we're doing. We are going to be delving deeply into all 4 of the disciplines of Buildership. So we are going to be spending time actually doing things that will help build your school culture. We're going to actually spend time practicing how to give the right kind of feedback. We're going to spend time developing support plans for our teachers and being strategic about that. And we're going to spend time putting accountability measures in place that help everybody in your school, you included, be more accountable to your core values, your vision, and your mission. And we're also going to end Builders Lab by creating your own Builder's Blueprint. So you're going to, by the time you're done, you're going to have a clear mission, a clear set of values, a clear set of core values, a clear vision for your school. And you're going to have a clear pathway for what you need to be doing right now to help your school achieve that vision, to live out that mission, and to make sure that you're doing it in a way that aligns with your core values. All that's happening at Builders Lab this summer. And we have 2 Builders Labs coming up this summer. The first one is Builders Lab West. That's what we're calling it, because we're going out to the West Coast for Builders Lab. We'll be in Palm Springs, California. The dates for that are June 24 through 26. And then we're doing one special for coaches, because here's the thing. Instructional coaches are kind of the middlemen in the school, right? They're not quite teachers. They're not quite administrators, and they don't really get training targeted at them. So what happens a lot of times is instructional coaches will be sent to teacher training, or they'll be sent to administrative training, but there isn't really a training that's designed specifically for instructional coaches and for the unique challenges that you face. So we have designed Builders Lab, the Coaches Edition, and it's happening July 15 through 17, right outside of Washington, D.C. in Arlington, Virginia. And it's specifically for coaches because we believe coaches have a unique and very powerful job. It's not being leveraged enough. And the reason it's not being leveraged enough is because coaches don't get good training, and that's wrong. So we want to fix that. So we have a powerful training designed just for instructional coaches. You can find out about both Builders Labs. Builders Lab West, which is happening June 24 through 26 in Palm Springs, California. That's for principals, assistant principals, district leaders, and instructional coaches. You can, if you can't get to the other one, certainly come to that one because you'll get something valuable out of it. But if you want something that's just focused on you, then come to Builders Lab, the Coaches Edition. And that's happening July 15 through 17, right here outside of Washington, D.C., in Arlington, Virginia. To find out about both events, you can go to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. That's mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. Okay. So let's talk about culture, and let's get back to that quote that I talked about at the beginning. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. One of the things that I think a lot of people miss out on is they jump straight to the strategy without really figuring out first, is my culture ready to be able to implement this strategy? Or people jump straight to, I need to fire this bad teacher and bring in a good teacher. But is that teacher a bad teacher because they're just inherently bad at what they do? Or does it have something to do with your culture? I find all the time people don't want to fix the culture. They want to hire and fire their way into a better culture. But here's the thing. If you take a good person and put them in a bad culture, the culture will win. And sooner or later, they will start acting in ways that are consistent with your culture, even though they may not be that type of person outside of your culture. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you've got to make sure that your culture is ready before you move forward with any initiative. Otherwise, your initiative will fail. You've got to make sure that your culture is right before you go out and hire all these people, because everybody's heard that tragic story about that great new young teacher that you brought in, and halfway through the year, she burns out because the other teachers are so negative that they impact that teacher. If you do not fix your culture will not be ready for anything new that you bring in, whether it's a new person or a new initiative. So you've got to get that right. And here's the thing about culture. A lot of times, the problem we think we have is not the problem we actually have. We think that people are just tired of new initiatives, or we think that people are just lazy, or we think that people don't have any motivation, or we think that people are worn out, when in fact, all of those are really symptoms of toxicity in your culture. All of those are symptoms of a culture that is not healthy. So when I say that those 4 disciplines of buildership can solve any problem that you're facing, one of the things that we don't take into consideration enough is how much culture is affecting our ability to move things forward. So have you ever gone into a school and said, you know what, we need to fix this area, and you've gone about fixing it and people slow walk you, or people drag their feet, or people complain about the initiative, or people say that they're really tired and we can't take on it one more thing, or people pay lip service to the initiative, but they don't really get moving and you can't seem to get people moving? At the heart of those issues is a culture issue. So you got to deal with the culture if you want to change those outcomes. If you have a situation where people are whining and complaining and there's a lot of pushback, or you've got this back channel activity happening all the time where, people don't say what they really mean to you, but they say what they really mean in the back channel. Or you've got the meeting and then you have the real meeting, which happens after the meeting, only you're not invited to that meeting where people talk about what they're going to do. If you've got kind of the vocal minority controlling what's happening in the school, then you really have a culture problem. And you've got to get that fixed first before you can move forward. So culture is critical. You can't have a perfect strategy and make it work if you don't have a culture that can support it. So that's why culture is so important. Now, I keep talking about culture, but I probably should stop here and define what I mean by culture. My definition of culture, and this has taken me years to kind of come up with, but I'm pretty happy with it now. My definition of culture is this: it's your organizational habits and the stories you tell about them. So let me say that again. Culture is a collection of your organizational habits and the stories that you tell about them. So what that means is that if you want to change the culture, you have to change the habits that are kind of inherent in the culture, and you have to change the stories that you tell about your culture. So another thing that I teach and I say all the time is whoever controls the narrative controls your culture. And I'm going to say that again. Whoever controls the narrative about your school controls the culture. So if the parents are the ones who control the narrative about your school, if the parents are the ones whose stories about your school take precedence, when people think about your school, they think about it through the lens that the stories that parents tell about your school, then your parents control your culture. If you've got a couple of, what do they call them? Negative Nellies. That's what people call them. You've got a couple of, I don't know if I like that. I'll just say this. If you've got a couple of negative people who are controlling the narrative about your school, they're the ones saying, every time we do something, we never follow through. Or, we tried that 10 years ago and it didn't work. And why are we doing that again? If that's the reigning narrative in your school, those people are controlling the culture. So one of the first things that you have to do is you have to get control of the narrative, right? Remember, culture is habits and stories. That's all culture is. So if you want to regain control of your culture, if you want to actually change your culture, then you've got to change your narrative. And at Builders Lab, we do a whole thing about, storytelling and narratives and how narratives are constructed and how you can reconstruct the narrative of your school and write a whole new school story. And then you actually do that at Builders Lab. Again, I can't do that here in a podcast situation, but I can do this. When you are creating your new story, there are 3 major questions that your story has to answer. And so what I thought I'd do today is talk to you about what are those 3 questions that your school story has to answer in order for you to take control over the narrative. People, when they come to work, they are always looking for answers to 3 questions. They're looking for, what are we building? Why does it matter? And what's my role? When I come into a job, I take a new job, first thing I want to know is, okay, what is this company about? Or what is this school about? What are we building? Then I want to know, why is this work important? Why is the work that I do so important? And then what's my role in this whole organization? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to behave? You can have all the rules you want. You can put all the things on the wall. But when people are stuck, when they don't know what to do or how to behave or how to react, the thing they look to is not what's on the wall or what's in the handbook. They look to your culture. And so If you cannot answer those questions for people, someone or something will answer those questions for them. And those answers shape your culture. So let's go through and break down each of those, and we'll talk about how each one of those questions shapes your culture. And if you can't answer that question, then you've lost control over your culture. When you answer those questions for people consistently in not only word, but in deed, then you take control over your cultural narrative, and that's how you begin to change your culture. So here's the first question. The first question is, what are we building? Where are we going? What is the thing that we're building? Where are we headed as a school? You see, people need to know that they're going somewhere. They need to believe that when they join your organization, they're headed for somewhere. Now, if you don't answer this for people, people will answer for themselves. People will say things like, we're headed straight for disaster, or this school is becoming more and more ghetto, or this school is becoming, we used to be this, but now we're headed in this other direction that's negative. And so people start to make up those stories about where we're headed, especially when they don't get direction from you, the builder. You have to answer the question, where are we headed? And that's really about your vision. That's what your vision answers. When you have a vision, what you are saying is, this is where we're headed as a school. And only you, as the builder, can create that vision. Nobody else can do it. If you don't know where you're going, how do you expect everybody else to know where you're going? People are looking to you for that direction. Where are we headed? Where are we going? What is it that we're building? And so you have to be very deliberate about answering that. Now, look, I went through the leadership training programs. I had to write a vision statement. They told me that I was going to need that for when I interviewed for a job. And so I wrote the traditional vision statement, and it's a whole bunch of blah, 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 blah. It's a whole bunch of I believe this and I believe that, and nobody cares. They don't care. They just want to know a simple, straightforward answer. In this school, where are we headed? Where are we going? What is it that we're building? You're telling me to work extra. You're telling me to work hard. You're telling me to be devoted and dedicated. For what? What are we building? What is this thing that we're building? And if you don't answer that question, people will answer that question for you. And you may not like what they have to say. So you've got to be there. Your vision has to give people direction and focus. It needs to tell people, this is where we're going. If I walked up to you and I said, hey, you want to come ride with me? Maybe you'll ride with me for a little while, but after a while, if I'm just driving around, first thing you're going to ask me is, where are we going? And if I said, I don't know, I thought I'd kind of just drive until I figured it out, that's going to feel like a waste of time for you. Now, if you really, really loved me, maybe you'll stay in the car, but you're not staying in the car because you're expecting us to get anywhere. You're just staying in the car because maybe you are concerned that I've lost my mind and you want to make sure that I get someplace safely, or maybe you just love me so much that you'll stay in a car. But you're not going to stay in a car long if I'm not headed anywhere. People want to believe that they're heading someplace. Now, even if your district doesn't give you any clear direction, it doesn't mean that in your individual schools, you can't set a clear direction. It doesn't mean that you can't give people some answer to the question, where are we going? And you, as the builder, are the only person who can do that. So here are two things about your vision. First of all, I talk a little bit more about setting a vision when I in the episode where I talk about how to build a better school strategic plan. That's episode 14, if you really want to get into some of the nitty-gritty for how to set a vision. But here are two things I'll say about vision right now. First of all, your vision has to be clear. What is the promise that you are making to students? If they come to your school, what can you guarantee will be their outcome? And you have to do the same thing for teachers. If I teach at your school, what can I accomplish? Where is the school going? Where are you taking the school? Right? You can't just say, well, it's a school. It does school stuff. No, your vision has to be something bigger that people can get involved in and be excited about. And that brings me to the second thing. Your vision has to include 100% of your kids. Trust me, nobody is getting excited about our vision for our school is that we will increase reading proficiency by 12.5% in 3 years. I promise you, nobody's getting excited about that. Nobody feels like that's a vision that's worthy of my time, attention, energy, and effort. So that can't be your vision. Anytime you set a vision for your school that doesn't involve 100% of your students, in the back of people's minds, they're hearing, you know what? Our vision is that we're going to fail a certain percentage of kids every single year. So your vision can't do that. I can't tell you, in some of the coaching groups that I've been involved in, and even in some of the builders labs that we've been doing lately, we sit down and we set vision. That's part of what we do at Builders Lab. And I'm just always amazed whenever people start, they're like, I can't do 100%. I'm a Title I school. I'll get in trouble if I don't meet it. Or I can't do 100% because our schools are so low, or my school is already doing so well. So 100%, we're at 80% now. And I think people are satisfied with that. All those are problems. So what we do at Builders Lab is we sit down and we say, okay, let's set a vision for 100% of your kids. What's the promise that you want to make? And I'm always amazed. I get goosebumps every time this happens, and it happens every time. People who start out skeptical, when they really start thinking about where they want to take their schools, where they're headed, what are they building as a builder, people get really excited. And then I get excited because I start seeing their visions. So all of a sudden, people are coming up with things like 100% of our students will graduate accepted either to college or to a career program or to a job, which means that when they graduate from our high school, 100% of them will have a clear next step in front of them. So not they will have these options, they will be accepted. And then this school has a signing day where every single senior comes out and declares what they are going to be doing that next year. And they have an acceptance letter from an employer for a job, or they have an acceptance letter into an apprenticeship program, or they have an acceptance letter into a college or university. One of those three things. Think about how that changes your culture. If everybody says, you know what we do at this school? We make sure that every single child who comes here not only graduates, but graduates with a post-secondary option of some sort already knitted up for them. One of the elementary school principals that came to Builders Lab recently, she did such an impressive job. She said, you know what? Here's the thing. Every kid will be reading on grade level by second grade because second grade reading is crucial. And not only that, they will maintain or improve their reading level for every single grade up until fifth grade. 100% of their kids. Now, what is that school about? What are we building? It's very clear. And that shapes everything we do in our school. Can't waste time on that because we got to get these kids reading by second grade at proficiency. They don't have to worry about third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. A lot of kids who are below proficient, they're worried about helping improve their proficiency level. And so they're worried on accelerating kids rather than remediating kids. Now, if that's something that I'm passionate about, I want to join that vision. And if it's not, I'm going to move somewhere else. That's the whole thing. Where are we going? If you don't answer that question for people, then everybody else gets to decide and everybody else gets to put their own spin on it. And that's why we have these cultures that are all over the place because there's no clear direction about where everybody's going. So that's the first question. And the second question is, why does it matter? Why is this work important? Why is what we are doing, this vision that you set for us, why does it even matter? People need the answer to that. And if they don't have the answer to that, you get a lot of chaos happening in your culture. But let's put it this way. Suppose somebody comes up to you and says, listen, I will double your salary right now. All you have to do is take this pile of bricks from this side of the parking lot and then move them to that side of the parking lot and make a pile over there. And then once you're done, take that same pile of bricks and move them back to the first side of the parking lot and make a pile over there on the first side. And you're going to keep moving bricks from one side of the parking lot to the other side of the parking lot for an entire year. And if you do that for a year, I will double your salary. My guess is that even if you took the job, which I think a lot of you probably wouldn't even take the job, but even if you took it, you would quit that job within a month. And the reason that you would quit that job is because as human beings, we cannot stand doing work that has no purpose. And yet, how much of our school culture is defined by work that really has no purpose? I mean, when you make teachers turn in lesson plans, is that the equivalent of having them move a pile of bricks back and forth a parking lot? Or when you institute a new program for the year just because it's a new year, or even worse, because the district is making you, or if you require people to do things just because it's the way it's always been done, or if you have meetings just because it's the first Monday of the month and that's when we always have our meetings, or if you make people stand in the hallways in between classes because I don't know, looks better, or you ask people to do anything without telling them why they're doing it, well, you're in effect asking people to move piles of bricks back and forth across a parking lot. People need to know why their work matters. They need to understand that when you ask them to create lesson plans that are aligned to the standards, it matters because then they're teaching students how to think for themselves, or they're in effect helping students learn how to learn and learn for life. Or when you ask teachers to take attendance, they need to know that it matters because it tells you who's missing. It tells the teachers who's missing, who you need to reach out to, who we're not currently reaching, it tells them who's here and who's not here. And then it helps them respond to that. When you do a fire drill properly, it means it's important because it means that we're prepared to keep students safe in case of a real disaster. It's not, we got to do a fire drill because the fire marshal says we have to do it once a month, and I don't want him coming into school and checking our log and saying we haven't done one this month. What people need to know is that when they get up in the morning and they come to work every single day, it matters. And why it matters. They need to know that the work that they do in your school matters. If they don't, then that's how toxicity creeps into your culture. So if your staff doesn't understand why they do what they do, if they don't understand how it matters, then they'll either go through the motions or they'll make up a reason that work matters to them. And I mean, think about it. Imagine the difference between a group of people who are working aimlessly or working for their own reasons versus a group that is laser focused on the same mission. Which group do you think has the better culture? And that's my point, really. If you don't take time to understand and express why the work you are asking people to do matters, you cannot shape a strong culture. You have to answer this question for people, and then you have to be disciplined about making sure that you keep everybody engaged in doing work that is on mission, doing work that matters. Otherwise, you're going to start to experience toxicity in your culture. Remember, whoever controls the narrative controls the culture. So your mission statement is there to create this bigger narrative about not only what your work is, but why your work matters. And so I can't go into how to write a mission statement here. When we do it at Builders Lab, so if you're coming to Builders Lab, don't worry, you are going to learn how to construct a really strong mission statement. But what I can do on this episode is I can give you a few caveats about your mission statement. So first thing is this, your mission statement has to be clear. When I read your mission statement, I need to know this is why you do the work. This is why you exist. And it can't be, edgy speak. So it can't be, we exist to help students become global citizens who are also lifelong learners in a 21st century society that honors diversity, and, throw in some career and college readiness into the mix and think you've got a mission statement. That's not a good mission statement. I have no idea after reading that why you do what you do. It seems like you don't know why you do what you do either. What you have to do is you have to use plain English, and you have to be very clear. Why do you do what you do? So here are a couple of some of the ones that some of the people who've come to Builders Lab have developed in the past. They've said things like, we exist to help students learn how to learn and to love learning. We exist to help students have more options and make better choices. Here's another one. We exist to help students figure out what they want to do with their lives and properly prepare for their future. How about this one? We exist to be a safe place where students can heal from trauma and get excited about learning again. Here's another one. We exist to help students understand how they learn and to learn at their own pace. See how all of them are very, very clear. And they're also kind of, compelling, which is the second thing your mission statement needs to be. They're inviting you to be a part of a bigger story, something bigger than yourself. In each of those cases, the mission is very, very clear. When I'm going through the day and I'm just trying to decide, should I stay at the copy machine and gossip? Should I slack off and not write lesson plans? Or should I write a lesson plan that's going to help my students increase their literacy? Well, If I have a compelling mission statement driving my work, I'm going to, as much as I may be tempted to gossip and as much as I may be tempted to slack off, I'm going to go ahead and do that lesson plan because that lesson plan is critical to the mission we have as a school. See, people begin to look at the culture for clues. And if your culture is shaped around a compelling and clear mission, one that's concise, that's the third thing that has to be concise, so that everybody can remember it, so that when you're walking down the halls, you can stop any teacher, any custodial worker, any paraprofessional, any main office secretary, and you can say, hey, why do we exist as a school? And they can give you an answer like that. Then you know you're on the right track. And when you have a mission that clear and that compelling, that begins to shape the narrative of your school. And when you're talking to people and they're off mission, you can say, listen, our existence, we exist because of this. What you're doing is outside of mission. It's off mission. So you need to stop doing that and get back on mission and do this work. And if that gets embedded in your culture, it will change your culture. Now, the first question you have to ask is, what are we building? Where are we going? Second question you need to answer is, why does it matter? And then the third question you have to answer is, what's my role? People look to the culture to figure out how to behave. They don't read your staff manual to figure out how to behave. They look to the culture. If I see a teacher getting to work late every single day and nobody says anything or nobody cares, well, that lets me know I can do that. If I see a teacher consistently get away with reading the paper in front of the class instead of teaching children, then I know I can get away with that. And I've seen this over and over and over again. When I go visit schools, I can from 5 seconds after I step into a building, I can feel the culture. And it's not this woo-woo magical stuff. I can just feel it. I've been in schools where I walk in and the school just felt peaceful. I've been in schools where I've walked in and the school felt purposeful. I've walked into schools where it's felt chaotic. And that feeling, that tangibility, it tells me how I behave. If I see trash on the ground, then I know I can throw trash on the ground if I feel like it. If I see students in the hall who should be in class, then I know being in class is not very important. If I see teachers yelling at kids, then I know I can yell at kids and it's okay. I look at the culture for my behavior. So if you are not deliberate about answering the question, what's my role? How am I expected to behave in this culture? You leave it open for everybody to be in control of that. And if you are not in control of your narrative, then you are not in control over your culture. So you have to be deliberate about giving people cues about how they behave. Now, here's how bosses do it. Bosses make a whole bunch of rules that don't make a lot of sense and don't really control anybody's behavior. Leaders, on the other hand, they try to kind of get people together and they try to say, hey, we need to all be doing this. And, or they try to hire people who just naturally behave correctly so that they don't have to manage behavior at all. And we all know that doesn't work. But what does work and what works consistently is when you have a clear set of core values. Now, I've talked about core values a lot. I talk about them on episode 9 about how your core values have to be non-negotiable. So we'll put a link in the show notes to episode 9 if you want to go back and listen to that. But I keep seeing this. The people in my coaching groups right now, we've been working together all year long, some of the coaching groups, and they have gone in and they have established core values. And it's amazing what doing that does to your culture. So what I want to do now is just give you a couple of rules about core values so that you can see how they can be. You have to do these things so that you can build core values that shape your narrative around what is my role? You can answer that question for people. So the first thing is that your core values should be non-negotiable. And again, I talk about that in episode 9 about why and how your core values should be non-negotiable. But I'll just briefly touch on it here. If you set core values and they are not non-negotiable, they mean nothing. You have to decide as a culture, and this is not something you can do by yourself. You have to get everybody else engaged in it. But you have to decide as a culture, who are we? How are we going to live out that vision and mission? So the vision tells me where I'm going. The mission tells me why it's important that I go there. But the core values tell me how I'm going to get there. They tell me what am I going to be doing on a day-to-day basis that will help me get to that vision. So they have to be non-negotiable. I can't say, oh, it's Monday, I feel like doing this, but on Tuesday, I don't feel like doing that. It has to be non-negotiable. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that your core values need to be brief and memorable. So I see a lot of people do core values like, okay, loyalty, service, and learning. I don't know what those mean. I have no idea what they mean. I might be able to remember them, but then I layer on top of those words my interpretation of, loyalty or perseverance or learning or lifelong learning or honoring diversity. I don't know what those mean. So when I say memorable, I mean that they have to be clear what we do and what we don't do. So I'll give you an example of a MindSteps core value. One of our core values is drama-free work environment. Now, why is that memorable? First of all, because I go all over the place and people are like, oh, you're the one with the drama-free work environment. It's memorable because it's short and concise, but it's also memorable because it really embodies something here at MindSteps. When we say drama-free work environment, we mean that if we have a client that brings a lot of drama, then we will sacrifice the client, even though it means sacrificing income to our company. If we have an employee that brings a lot of drama, we bring the employee in, we say, look, we don't have a drama. If you want drama, this is not going to be a good place for you because here we have a drama-free work environment. If we bring drama ourselves, we are open to being checked. The other week, I'd been traveling a lot and I was in the office and I was looking at my schedule and I'm whining about my schedule. And Sherry looked at me and she said, that's a lot of drama for somebody who wants a drama-free work environment. And I immediately had to check myself because remember, core values tell me what's my role. I know what my role is. My role is not to bring any new drama into the work environment. But it also means that when we are doing something, we don't do stuff that requires a whole bunch of drama. So if we are creating a program or we are making travel arrangements, if it has too much drama, we're like, that's too much drama. Let's find another way. We have a drama-free work environment. And we have other core values too that are easy to remember. So figure it out. That's a core value that we have. We say it to each other all the time. I don't know how to do it. Figure it out. And what that means is we have this figure it out thing. We have clients who come to us with challenges, and our job is we have to help that client figure it out. We don't tell them what to do. We help them figure it out. So it's a difference between giving somebody a fish and teaching them how to fish. And if it's something that we don't know how to do, then we have to figure it out ourselves. So figure it out is a core value. And another core value is do the right thing even when it hurts. And the even when it hurts is what makes it so memorable. Yeah, do the right thing. Even when it hurts means that I have to focus on what is right versus what is convenient. So if a client needs something and I'm like, I can put it off till tomorrow, but I know that it would serve the client more to give it to them right now, I stay an extra hour at work and I get it done. If something happens in the office and, I don't feel like dealing with it right now and I want to put it off, but that's not the right thing to do, I don't do it. Or if I'm tempted to cut corners sometimes, no, I can't cut corners because that doesn't serve our clients. So then I have to do the right thing even when it hurts. Are your core values memorable? Can people remember? Can they tell you what your core values are? And so that's why I'm not a big fan of these lists of 20 different core values. I think that the right sweet spot, this comes from a little bit of research. Kim Blanchard kind of recommends this as well, is that you need between 3 and 4 core values. Any more than that, people aren't going to remember them. And then here's the other thing. If you have too many core values, they start canceling each other out. So that's why the third thing that you need, if you really want your core values to shape your narrative, is that you need core values that are in ranked order. Now, this is something new. I didn't know this a couple of years ago. So I just started kind of teaching this and learn this. And we actually did this here at MindSteps, and it's made a huge difference. So we have 3 core values: drama-free work environment. We have, and they're in ranked order. We sat down about 6 months ago and we said, we are going to sit down and we have these 3 core values, but now we're going to rank them. And it was a really interesting conversation. So we said, okay, drama-free work environment, figure it out, do the right thing, even when it hurts. What is the right order for those? And what we realized is that above everything else, we have to have no drama. It's a small and mighty team that we have here. We have to make sure we're working in close quarters. We're doing really important work. We can't have a whole bunch of drama because that just adds to the work. We really need to be focused on doing the right work. So drama-free work environment came up as number 1. And then we start saying, okay, well then what's number 2? And what we realized was do the right thing, even if it hurts, it's number 2. And then the last one is figure it out. So here's how that plays out. Let's say I have something that I need to do. And if I do it one way, it's going to create a lot of drama. But if I do it another way, it's not going to create as much drama. And I'm choosing between those. When I'm weighing a decision, the first thing I say, what has the least amount of drama for me and for the client? What is the right thing, even if it hurts? And then what is the best way to figure this out? And so let's say I'm doing something and I figure something out and I'm like, yeah, I figured it out. I'm going to move forward. If the thing that I figured out to do creates more drama, I can't do it. If the thing I figured out to do isn't the right thing, I can't do it. So by ranking the core values, you've created a decision-making filter, which helps people do the right thing even when you're not looking. So you have core values in your school. Have you engaged your staff in a conversation where you've actually ranked the core values? So if I am in a dilemma and it's a decision between this one and this one, which one trumps the other one? And when you do that, you give people a very clear set of guidelines that can govern their behavior. Let me talk about what that might look like in a school situation. Let's say that one of your core values is that, let's say your mission is that you want to help kids learn to love rigorous learning. So one of your core values is a lifelong learner, which means that lifelong learning is a core value to you, that you don't want to just learn for the test. You want to be learning for the sake of learning and you want it to be lifelong. And then another thing that's a core value for you is something like perseverance. So a student is doing a task. If you say that lifelong learning outranks perseverance, then you might allow a student to stop reading something that they're not interested in, a book that they're not interested in, and go on to a book that they are interested in, because lifelong learning, as you know, if you're teaching people how to read and learn how to enjoy reading, if they're reading something they're not interested in, what you do as an adult, a lot of times you stop reading the book and move on to something else, right? But if perseverance is the ranking core value, then you would be more focused on helping that student persevere through the book because you want to cultivate that. And you want to cultivate in a way that doesn't kill his love for reading for life, but you also want to focus on the perseverance. So see how by ranking the core values, you help people make good decisions even when you're not around. So, I mean, I guess that's a thing. That's a thing about building a really solid culture. We think that culture is some amorphous, complicated thing and, oh, it's a culture and I don't know what to do about it. Or we try to fix culture by, putting cupcakes in the staff lounge on Tuesdays and writing them happy notes on Monday. But if these things are not there, then you can write all the happy notes you want. Those notes go right in the trash. You can put all the cupcakes in the staff lounge you want. And you know what people do? They'll eat your cupcakes and talk about you behind your back. You have to have the narrative right. Remember, whoever controls the narrative controls the culture. And the 3 ways that you gain control over the narrative is you have to answer 3 questions. What are we building? Where are we heading? That's your vision. You have to answer, why does it matter? That's your mission. And then you have to answer, what's my role? And those are your core values. You answer those 3 questions consistently and you gain control over your narrative and you change the culture. Because once that becomes a narrative, your habits start to change to support that new narrative. Your habits start to adjust in ways that make sense for the narrative. You want to create a healthy school culture? You've got to start by doing the hard work of answering those 3 questions. You've got to change the narrative. Because remember, whoever controls the narrative controls the culture. But again, when you control that narrative, when you answer those 3 questions for people over and over and over again, what are we building? Why does it matter? And what's my role? If you are constantly reinforcing that message, you change the narrative. The habits in your culture begin to change. And that's how you build a healthy school culture like a builder. Now, before we go, don't forget, if you really want to learn how to do this, we are really doubling down on core values, vision, and mission this summer at both Builders Lab. And if you're an instructional coach and you say, well, it's not really my core values, vision, or mission, that's a school-wide thing. Well, you are underestimating the power that you have as an instructional coach to influence those three things. We're going to be talking about how you can, as an instructional coach, occupy a very unique role, and that's the role of change agent. You see, the builder is not the change agent. A builder needs a change agent, but the builder is not the change agent. And so we're going to show you the difference between the builder who's in charge of the building and the change agent. And we're going to show you how you can occupy that role. And if you are a builder, if you are a school administrator or a district administrator, we're going to be doubling down on core values, vision, and mission. We're going to help you create them for your school. And we're going to show you how you can use those three things to really drive the work that you want to happen in the school. And I promise you, it is a game changer. So again, to register for Builders Lab and join us. And if you're listening to this far in the future and the summer is past, don't worry. There's a Builders Lab always coming up. So to register for Builders Lab, go to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. And after you register for Builders Lab, let me know that you've registered and that you're coming on LinkedIn so that I can start looking for you and getting to know you a little bit, because Builders Lab is a really intimate, intensive. We work really, really hard, but we work closely together. We keep it small so that we can dig in together and do the work, and I can give you my personal support. So if we are not connected on LinkedIn and you are coming to Builders Lab, you need to go ahead and reach out. We should be connected before Builders Lab so we can start planning and getting excited about your coming. Also, this is a favor I want to ask you. You see, in order for people to really find this podcast and to be able to benefit from it the way that you've benefited from it, we need to have some more reviews on iTunes. So would you do me a favor? Would you give me your honest review on iTunes? And if you're not sure how to do that, there's a link on the show notes. And so it's to get the show notes, you go to schoolleadershipreimagined.com, and then you can put /episode 34. That's today's episode, or any episode you want to see. So if you want to go to episode 9, schoolleadershipreimagined.com/episode 9. They're all there. And on each episode, there's a link that shows you how to give a review. If you could go there and click that link and then leave an honest review on iTunes, it would really help other people find this podcast. Plus, it gives me some really great feedback and shows me what I need to be doing to make sure that this stays valuable for you. And maybe you're too shy to do a review, but you can still help me out, because the other thing you can do is, if you found today's podcast useful, would you mind sharing it with 2 people who you also think would benefit from this podcast? So maybe you are a school administrator and you want to share it with the rest of your administrative team. Maybe you're an instructional coach and you want to share it with your school administrator. Maybe you're a district leader and the people that you support at different schools could really benefit from this. Would you mind sharing this with others? Because that would be, I would count that as a huge favor. And I know it would get the word out to this podcast to other people. Plus, you look like a hero too, because you're passing on a really great resource. All right. So let's talk about next week. This week, we talked about culture, and we talked about why it is so important and what you need to do if you're going to create a healthy school culture. Next week, we're going to shift to talking about feedback. We're going to talk about how you may be unintentionally creating more problems with the way you're giving feedback, how you can clean that up, what's the right way to give feedback, and how you can overcome a lot of pushback and hurt feelings and blank stares just by the feedback that you get. Next week, we're going to dig deep. We're going to talk about how to give powerful feedback and how to do it like a builder. I hope you'll join me next time. Thanks very much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. For show notes and free downloads, visit schoolleadershipreimagined.com. School Leadership Reimagined is brought to you by MindSteps, Inc., where we build master teachers.